Africa is going, I think, into a very, very difficult chapter at the moment. And a lot of this, I'm afraid, goes back to Ukraine and Russia, because the reason why both sides have got arms is because Russia has been funding both sides with weapon systems. The Wagner Group is there in strength.
Now, UK diplomats and their families are currently being evacuated from the country. What does that process look like, and how long do you think that will take?
Yes, this is an incredible operation involving our tier one military assets, and it's no insignificant operation. This is huge, involving almost a couple thousand of people, 16 Air Assault Brigade, our Marines as well, the RAF, in order to evacuate the diplomatic personnel and dependents. And it was done, I think, with a little bit of secrecy, deliberately so, but working in conjunction with our allies. So I'm pleased to see that after an awful lot of work, this has been executed very, very well indeed. I should stress that our military train regularly for this. This is well rehearsed, but it's also very, very difficult to then perform in these conditions, as you were just articulating. The security situation in Khartoum, indeed in wider Sudan, is deteriorating. We have two military forces that were supposed to merge after the President Bashir was forced to step back a couple of years ago. But these two have continued to have a bitter power struggle. And now it's spilled over into all-out street fighting. So it's going to get very difficult indeed. My concern, if I have one, is what's now for all those Brits, UK passport holders that are left in the country. Some are expats, some, like my constituents, are actually visiting the country and are stuck there now. And I do hope the government will provide guidance as to what should happen to allow these people now to be able to follow our diplomats and get out the country safely.
And that's certainly the next question I was going to ask you, because many people have been messaging in saying, look, it's good that diplomats are leaving, but what about the other Britons? Because, of course, the situation is getting absolutely desperate, with electricity cut off and a lack of safe access to food and water, and, of course, the increasing violence as well. What pressure will you be putting on the Foreign Office and the MOD to bring out the other UK nationals?
Well, I've been in touch with a number of ministers to make this very point. You're right to describe the conditions. It's not just the absence of electricity, which means that there's little internet, inability to be able to communicate. The temperatures are exceedingly hot as well. You're looking at over 40 degrees there as well. These are very, very difficult temperatures. There are bodies lying in the streets as well. And unfortunately, we're also seeing the rapid support forces actually emptying prisons where they're going in their wake. They're leaving a path of destruction, emptying these prisons. And in one of the areas where my constituents is based, you've got murderers and rapists now roaming the streets at large, causing another dimension to this. So we do need to get a program in place which allows us to work with our allies, I would suggest, taking advantage of the military assets that we have in the Middle East and so forth, also the American bases in Eritrea, to see what we can do to make sure that we can evacuate all those personnel that would like to leave the country.
And in terms of the international community, what more can the international community do? Because, of course, they're in a very delicate situation where they're trying to work with both sides to allow safe passage of people to leave, certainly diplomats and hopefully UK nationals. But what more can be done to try and stop the violence that's happening there? Or is this a situation where the international community can't really do very much?
Well, it's always easier to do these things when you have the consent of the warring factions. We've got two generals here. You've got the general of the Sudanese forces, General Burhan, and then you've got the General Hamedati, who's the leader of the paramilitary, mostly based in the Darfur region. They came together to deal in the aftermath of when President Bashir was deposed. Then they couldn't agree who was then going to lead the forces in the future, as I say, has now spilled out into all-out conflict themselves. If we can get both parties to agree, even a limited ceasefire, that would be a step in the right direction. But we've tried twice now to implement a ceasefire, and that's absolutely failed. But the first step would be to plead with them to have an interregnum, a pause, to allow the international community to get out. Worst case scenario is that we would then have to provide a plan of action, which would require us rallying expats to certain RV locations, moving them out towards the desert, and then extracting them probably by rotary, by helicopter from that place there. I would say on a wider point, though, if I may, is that what's going on in Sudan is going to be repeated in other countries in Africa. Africa is going, I think, into a very, very difficult chapter at the moment. And a lot of this, I'm afraid, goes back to Ukraine and Russia, because the reason why both sides have got arms is because Russia has been funding both sides with weapon systems. The Wagner Group is there in strength and is there also to extract the gold. And the gold is required to fund Russia's war in Ukraine. There are some bigger strategic questions that the West now needs to face in where Africa is going.
Well, Tobias,